can I just first ask a question? Who in this room is a farmer or is operating a farm? Just raise hands. Okay, and who is more like an investor or looking for new technologies in the horticulture industry? One? Okay. Good. I should use this. Oops. No. Sorry. Oops. Okay. Well, sorry for that. Okay, so I would like to share. Click on the name. All right. Okay. So I'd like to share the evolution of the indoor vertical farming industry in the future, and also how it can provide opportunities to create successful businesses or to diversify your activities if this is not exactly your current field of activity. But first, I don't know how familiar the audience today is with indoor farming, so I will quickly recap what it is all about, what are the advantages of indoor farming, what the challenges are also for indoor farming operations, as it's been booming for the last couple of years, but now we're seeing that in some parts of the world it is not as successful as expected, so we can learn from that. And yeah, I will wrap up some takeaways in the end. But first, a few words about Urban Crop Solutions. We're a Belgian-based company created in 2014. What we do is we provide tailor-made turnkey solutions for indoor farming from the pre-sales feasibility study. So we really look deep with the customer into what he really wants to grow, to which distribution channels he intends to sell his products, if it is profitable or not. In some cases we have to say, well, sorry, but return on investment will take 100 years, so you'd better stop at this stage. It really depends. It's a really case-by-case analysis that we have to carry. But also we have very good cases in regions where the parameters for vertical farming are better. And so then we proceed with dimensioning, engineering, procurement, construction, and all the after-sale services with the consumables, the training, the biological consultancy, if new varieties are to be developed in our systems. So we're headquartered in Belgium. We have a regional office in the US and also in Japan, and agents a bit here and there. We carried out feasibility studies in 40 countries so far. So we have a good idea of how changing the electricity price can trigger what can impact the vertical farming industry. So in a nutshell, producing indoor vertically is a space-efficient way to produce crops in a fully controlled environment. By fully controlled environment, I mean the photoperiod. You can have 18 hours of ideal sunlight simulated in your indoor environment. You can choose a light spectrum and the light intensity so that the crop just gets the wavelengths that it needs for photosynthesis. And so this is how also you bring your electricity costs down. Adapt the temperature, humidity, the nutrient solution, CO2 concentration, pH, electroconductivity. And so it's usually a hydroponic system, sometimes aeroponics. And most commonly grown crops are herbs, leafy vegetables, and microgreens. These are the most easy crops to make a profitable case with, but we also have edible flowers, medicinal plants, salty vegetables, and fruity crops in some cases that can also be very good cases. Technically, you can grow anything you want. It's just that it won't be economically profitable to grow an apple tree in an indoor environment. But for research purposes, it can also be used, for example, with banana seedlings. We've had a request for that. Also, what we notice is that the seed suppliers have selected varieties for open field crops usually, and so we invest a lot of energy in research and development so that we find varieties that thrive in an indoor hydroponic system, and these are not always the same as that the varieties providing the best yields outdoors. So why indoor farming? Why some people, some companies choose to invest and start producing indoor while there is free sunlight every day? You know, sun is rising every day, so why produce in an indoor environment? Well, the preoccupation for most of our customers, from the food services, the wholesale industry, food production, is the logistical considerations. You can have an indoor farm in a hub, a logistical hub just next to a processing factory. It's also very predictable because the environment is controlled, and so you can you don't have to worry or manage the risk of not having the production as expected. You do have some risk, but compared to trading commodities on the worldwide market, it's much more predictable. Indoor farming usually don't require to use any pesticide because we prevent pests from entering the environment. So from the consumer's point of view, it's perceived as a healthy product, pesticide-free. Organic certification is a bit, it's currently being debated, especially in the US, whether hydroponic crops should be eligible for organic certification. So it's unclear, but pesticide-free is a claim that has an added value for consumers in many countries. Also, one of our customer segment is research and development in the pharmaceutical industry, also by academics. To publish a paper in scientific world, you need data that are reliable, and our system just do that, so they collect data 24/7 so that you can actually prove the results you get. And also a last segment would be any energy producing facilities. Wherever you have cheap electricity or excess electricity and you don't know how to use it, well, a vertical indoor farm is a way to use that electricity on a regular basis. Also, well, I think this was also mentioned previously, but the world population keeps growing and keeps living in larger cities, so you have more and more opportunities to supply food at premium price in large urban environment. Also, the arable land is already mostly used, and this is a map I wanted to show because people talk about climate change, etc. I'm not saying this is necessarily 100% accurate, but this is how the planet might look like by the end of the century if we have plus 4 degrees Celsius of average temperature change. So it doesn't leave much arable land left, and it will take decades to get there or not to get there if we act properly, but the general trend is that food supply for large cities will really become a geostrategic, something we should worry about. And cities will also, this is already something observed in Middle East, for example, where I think it's Qatar's border was shut for a couple of weeks, and so people rushed in supermarkets to get food. And so current long worldwide food supply chains might not last forever, and so having closer local food production might become an issue increasingly. Okay, so that was for the context. What are the challenges? Well, I think Japan is a good example to learn lessons about plant factory operations. First, Japan started plant factories quite early. In the 90s, they already had their first plant factories, and they kept starting new indoor vertical farms. There was a boom in the early 2000s because many industries that are not related to farming relocated their operations in Asia, in China, in Vietnam, etc. So they were left with empty warehouses, empty factories, and staff that they wouldn't lay off because that's the Japanese corporate culture. So they needed to keep people busy, and so many of these companies started indoor hydroponics. And so I think that's why also many of these plant factories are not successful, is because the basic assumption was that they needed to keep people busy. So they didn't really investigate into automation. Another thing is also that these companies didn't have enough expertise in agriculture or hydroponic in the first place. So the learning curve was quite steep, and they started with low value crops like, you know, basic lettuces or leafy vegetables. And so currently, yeah, roughly 25% of indoor vertical farms in Japan are profitable. So how should we do to be in these 25%? What can we learn from those who make profit out of these operations? Whoops. I won't go into detail in the business case, but roughly what you should look at in this business case is that semi-variable charges, electricity and labor, are the two costs that we would like to bring down to increase the chance of having a profitable indoor vertical farm. Same for large-scale operations. Electricity and labor are really the two parameters on which we focus with our customers. So there's a general strategy to lower electricity costs, is just to look at locations where electricity is cheap. You don't need a PhD to find that out. You can also use nighttime electricity, off-peak electricity that is cheaper, or have a contract with industrial rates. High voltage kilowatt hours is cheaper, or also in some countries agricultural companies or farmers have cheaper electricity, so that's something you can leverage. And the second way to decrease your electricity consumption is basically to make the best use of it. So increase density of the crops in your system, meaning that by automating transplantation, you avoid providing light to empty surfaces. Also by adapting the LED, the light spectrum, by finding varieties that have shorter internodes and that light spectrum that, for example, will let your crop grow vertically, so that you can have denser use of the surface. Labor cost is the other parameter we want to bring down. So, well, in the center column, monitoring the parameters, corrective actions, for example, the fertilizer mix, seeding, transplanting, conveying all these trays, cutting, harvesting, packaging, and trays washing. These are tasks that can currently be automated. Automation, it saves labor costs, but it also reduces the risk of human error in the system, and also the risk of contamination. If you don't have working corridors for the staff, it means that you can use your space more efficiently. And if no human beings enter the system in the first place, you will also have less risk of contamination. So you save time and space. This is just to give you an idea from a concrete case of a feasibility study for a 1 ton lettuce per day production factory. So imagine that the labor cost you would have to plant 7,000 plus substrate in 27 germination racks. It would probably take several hours. With automation, we bring it down to 7 minutes. Washing the trays also with a machine you would invest in, you would have 25 minutes instead of 850 trays per hour. I don't think a human being can do that. And also for the transplanting of the seedling at different densities, you save considerable amount of time. So instead of 4 to 5 full-time equivalent, we bring that down to 3.5. A third challenge, so bringing the cost down is a good thing, but you should also try to produce high added value crops. The market value of a crop, you know this, but it varies during the year. And so in order to have a profitable indoor vertical farm, you should have the possibility to choose between different crops at different stages of the year and the season to leverage the higher prices. Also consider selling by heads instead of selling by weight, and differentiate your product by building a brand around it health claim, with focusing on tasty varieties. For example, we have developed we have selected a mint with a taste and flavor like strawberry. That's something that really draws curiosity from the consumer. And or for example, the broccoli sprout is a product that is getting a lot of attention in Japan with its high content in antioxidants. Antioxidants. Yeah, sorry. Or another example is kale. That in Germany, for example, the vegetarian community is really crazy about that superfood. So you should try to find varieties that allow you to sell your product at a premium price. Just for the record, the varieties that we currently, for which we have growth protocols in our system, so we don't only provide the hardware, but we also help our customers to use this algorithm to produce many different crops in our indoor farming environment. So you should also find the proper distribution channel. A common assumption is that vertical indoor farms only work at large scale. That's the mainstream discourse we hear now in the industry, but we still believe that at small scale, at a container-sized indoor farm, you can still be very profitable if you choose the right crops and if you reduce the number of intermediaries to sell your products. So yes, thorough feasibility study before starting or investing in indoor farms. You should really look at what you will produce, not only at a given time in the year, but have a plan B, plan C, and know what different crops you could produce, how you're going to market it, who are going to consume these. Invest to bring semi-variable costs down, so labor and electricity. If it's really worth looking into the cost of these small automation systems, and know what to produce when and for which distribution channels. Thank you.